Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast, your source for insights and ideas on how to lead your church in the 21st century. At the Future Christian Podcast, we talk to pastors, authors, and other faith leaders for helpful advice and practical wisdom to help you and your community of faith walk boldly into the future. Whether you're a pastor, church leader, or a passionate member of your faith community, this podcast is designed to challenge, inspire, and equip you with the tools you need for impactful ministry. And now for a little bit about the guest for this episode.
Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. Today, Loren Richmond Jr. welcomes the Reverend Dr. Susan Ward Diamond to the program. Dr. Diamond is the lead pastor of Florence Christian Church, Disciples of Christ in Florence, Kentucky, where she has served since 2015. Susan received her Bachelor of Arts degree from Texas Christian University, a Master of Divinity degree from Bright Divinity School, and a Doctor of Ministry degree from United Theological Seminary in Dayton, Ohio. Dr. Diamond has invested herself in ministry and mission through local, regional, and general expressions of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada throughout her 33 years of ordained ministry. She has served on the regional boards of the Florida and Alabama Northwest Florida regions, directed numerous youth camps and conferences, and served as a keynote speaker of retreats and assemblies around the country. She has served her denomination as first vice moderator for the 2011 to 2013 biennium of the Christian Church Disciples of Christ in the United States and Canada. During her sabbatical in 2021, Dr. Diamond and Dr. Rita Nakashima Brock collaborated on a pastoral study grant funded by the Louisville Institute entitled Moral Injury, a Catalyst for Reform. Following the study period, they have continued their work together to offer strategies to faith communities for providing support and healing for those suffering from moral distress and moral injury. They have recently launched the podcast Soul Repair After Moral Injury. Susan and Rita are currently writing a book, which they hope to publish soon. A reminder before we start today's conversation, please take a moment to subscribe to the podcast, leave a review, and share Future Christian with a friend. Connect with Loren, Martha, and Future Christian on Instagram. Send us an email at loren@resonatemediapro.com with comments, questions, or ideas for future episodes. We are grateful for your voice in how we faithfully discern the future of the church.
Welcome to the Future Christian Podcast. This is Loren Richmond Jr., and I am pleased to be welcoming today Reverend Dr. Susan Diamond. Hello, and welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm delighted to be with you.
Yeah, looking forward to having this conversation. Is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know about you?
Well, I was looking through my bio, and I realized I didn't put anything about, my personal life. So I'll share a couple of things about those with you because it's interesting. So I have been married, to my husband, Ron, for almost 46 years now. And I don't want anybody to do the math, but I was a baby when we got married. Let's just say that. And the second thing I would want listeners to know, about my husband. He is a professional entertainer, travels all over the U.S. and actually has done some international work as well, as a magician and stage hypnotist.
Wow.
So it's a very interesting combination to have a female pastor with her magician husband. I get a lot of comments about that. But he's fantastic. He's been in entertainment for 50 years and just is a great entertainer and a wonderful husband. Also, one of the things that we love to do is travel. And so we do lots of cruising and we do lots of traveling around the world. We've been blessed to be able to do that. And we are proud parents of a little miniature dachshund named Bella. And she's kind of the light of our life. Hopefully you will not hear her barking. My husband has orders to keep her quiet
Yeah.
while we're doing this.
I have a bigger dog that likes to shove her head in my lap. intermittently during these conversations.
Yeah.
Well, I want to talk cruising, but do you have a cruise coming up, I guess? Any big?
I do. Yes. In May, we are going on a very short cruise, only 5 days, but we're going to Cozumel and Bimini on Virgin. It's the first time we've traveled on Virgin, but a lot of our friends have told us how much fun it is. And my husband says he likes to go cruising because it gets me away and nobody can get in touch with me.
Yeah,
And,
that's
that was
true.
actually before Wi-Fi became available, but we say nobody calls while we're on a cruise. So it's a good thing for my, our relationship and for my emotional health. Yeah.
Yeah. I was thinking about that because I did a cruise. My parents took my family on a Disney cruise some years ago. And I remember that was a real nice thing because I was not going to pay for Wi-Fi because it's not cheap for one on the cruise. So I'm like, well, I guess I'm going to have great boundaries here because no one could call me.
Unplug. Yes.
Yeah.
Indeed.
Yeah. Well, share if you would just kind of about your faith journey, how it began, what it looks like today and
yeah. Well, it's changed a lot. I'll just say that over the time I have been alive, I was raised in the Christian faith. I remember, from a very, very early age asking questions about God, and my grandmother had a big impact on my life. Felt a sense of call. Didn't know that was called to pastoral ministry, which is where I landed. But, I remember when I was a senior in high school, they had the yearly Youth Sunday event. And so, two of us, both named Susan, by the way, were asked to do a little personal testimony. And I got up and I said how easy it was to be a Christian. And then my friend Susan got up and she said how hard it was to be a Christian.
Oh, interesting.
And it was interesting. And I have learned over the years that my friend Susan had it more right than I did at the time. So, I know now that, it's not an easy thing to be a Christian. And I think even in the climate that we're living in now, truly being a follower of Christ and being a disciple, is very challenging and especially in the church today. So, I know that's true, but, I think that's really where I want to stop there. I can go on and on and on and talk about a spiritual journey that led me into ministry. I was very, very grateful for all the doors that opened to me so that I would be able to pursue that, especially by working as a church secretary at Bright Divinity School. And one of the benefits of working there was full tuition for my husband and I to finish we got married really early and we dropped out of school and then we were able to complete our undergraduate degrees, based on that. And then God had me at Bright Divinity School working so that I could see women going into ministry and then opening the doors for me to do that. So I am incredibly grateful for the journey and all the changes that have happened in my life as I've been involved in this odd and wondrous calling of ministry. Yeah,
that's a good way of saying it. Share if you're willing.
There's a book written by that title.
Yeah. Share if you're willing any thoughts on spiritual practices that are meaningful for you, you're willing to share.
Okay. So, let me just say this. I was at a meeting. It was a boundaries training meeting with other ministers. I think there were probably a couple of hundred people, and we were sitting at round tables because that very question was asked. What do you do to take care of yourself spiritually? What are the practices that you do? And around this whole table, everybody was talking about, I get up and I meditate and I go for a run. I do this, I do that. And when it got to me, I said, well, every day I have a little bit of chocolate and a little bit of wine. And those are spiritual practices, but not only that, of course.
Sure.
I love spending quiet time with God. I love communing with nature. I love journaling. I love, reflecting on stuff that I read. So these are daily practices every single day, that I'm involved in and really get a lot out of it. I work with a spiritual director.
Okay.
And that's
yeah.
probably one of the most life-changing things that I have done in the last several years. But she keeps me grounded and continues to ask probing questions that I often, because of the work that I do that focuses on everybody else, I don't focus on myself as much.
Yeah.
And so I have found that to be quite rewarding.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing all that. Well, we're here to talk with Susan today, sort of as an extension of the Remind and Renew conference that took place in Phillips Seminary. I was pleased to be there in person and got to speak with Susan's co-speaker. What would be the word? One of your colleagues?
Yes. Dr. Rita Nakashima Brock, who we co-host a podcast, a limited podcast, and we've done some work on moral injury over the years.
So the Phillips Seminary Remind and Renew conference this year was centered on the theme of seeking wisdom and understanding in troubling times. And with my conversation with Dr. Brock, we kind of just talked through that theme. And I kind of wanted to do the same thing here today. Obviously, as I mentioned, before we start recording, I think this is important. This will air sometime after, obviously, as we are already past it. But when I recorded with Dr. Brock, we were just before the presidential inauguration. Now we're into it, and this will be aired, some weeks or perhaps months after. So I think in many ways that's shifted the national mood in some ways. Yeah. So I want to start with this. Let's reflect, if you can, as you think about troubling times. You're a pastor. You've been leading a church community for many years. What have you seen that's perhaps unique about our current context? What do you think is the same? What are you seeing perhaps in your congregants that feels different? Feel free to respond to what strikes you.
Yeah, I was I was just thinking about that. I was earlier today, I'm off on Fridays, and so I was getting all my chores done, personal chores done, and one of them was getting my nails done. That's my guilty pleasure, kind of thing. But the person who owns the nail salon is from Cambodia, and nobody was this was interesting. Nobody was in there except the two of us, and she's been my nail person for a long time. And she was talking with me about our governor, actually, in Kentucky, is Andy Brashear, who is part of our denomination, the Christian Church Disciples of Christ.
Shout out.
She brought him up as somebody who really cares about people.
Yeah.
And she said, I'm so thankful for he cares about me. And I said, yes, he does. And I know him personally, and he is a man of faith, and he really believes that each human being is worthy of dignity and respect. And she said, I'm just unrattled right now because I feel like I'm not safe.
Yeah.
And she said, well, she was robbed a couple of months ago from home, and there's not been as many people coming in the nail salon. So she's worried about her business.
Right.
But she's also worried about, people like herself that come from a different ethnicity that may be targeted in some way. She's totally legally here in the United States, she said, I understand getting people who are dangerous off the streets. She said, but this is not good. This is not the kind of America that I thought I was coming to. And so I it took some time just to be with her, to affirm her. And in our local congregation, as a pastor of this congregation, which is an amazing congregation, been in existence for almost 200 years, at the beginning of the Stone Campbell movement, and 1831 actually was when it was established. But the church's DNA has always been about serving the community. And so we are involved in some amazing kinds of ministries to people who are marginalized. The unhoused, we have a shower ministry that goes on with them. With those that are food insecure, we have a 24/7 outdoor pantry, as well as a huge distribution a couple times a month that we make. We have a health clinic once a month that goes on with, but we have lots of community partners, nonprofit community partners that make these ministries possible. And there is anxiety about all of the, all the cuts that are being made. We are grant generated, and a lot of the partners that we work with are grant generated. And we're concerned for the least of these, because our little church, which operates a big ministry, is not able to do that on tithes and offerings. And so we are, I think there's a lot of concern about that. Our congregation is a very diverse community. We do not all think the same way. We are not all on the same political persuasion. And yet we are very, very clear about the kind of mission that we have, that we're called to. And so these are all challenging times that we're living in. And as I said to Rita shortly after the election, that I think that even before we saw what's happened since the inauguration, that we have our work cut out for us as we are looking toward the future with moral injury happening in lots of different ways.
I appreciate you sharing all that. I'm struck by kind of what you said, and I'm going to get his name wrong, so forgive me, and disciples of Christ at large, forgive me. Bashir? Bashir, okay. Governor Bashir.
Yes.
I think that's striking what you shared, how he's being perceived is that he cares about other people. I think what's most troubling to me about our current time and place is it feels like caring for people is like considered, in some circles, folks are saying empathy is a sin, which is, mind-bogglingly preposterous. And I'm also struck by what you shared about your church. You said, if I heard you correctly, your church is not a church that they all vote the same way, but they have agreed, to be clear on mission and service to others. Which again, I think is striking. So do you want to share more about, how that kind of ethos has come to be and how you've helped foster that?
Thanks for asking that question, because I think it's an important one. I have been lead pastor at Florence Christian now for 10 years. And when we came to the church, we recognized pretty quickly that the church had gone through a time of questioning what their existence was about and that kind of thing. So we really worked very hard on the first year to 18 months on mission to get clarity about what it was that God was calling us to be and do, and our why. What was our reason for existence? We also developed a set of core values that guide us. So our mission is that we celebrate God's welcome table of abundant love, grace, and acceptance. It's just the ethos that we live out of. And so that has opened the doors really wide to a great diversity of people, coming in, that they're welcome, they're received, they're loved. And, we really embrace that. The core values that we have are to welcome radically and serve boldly and form faith every day. We cannot do the first two unless we are forming our faith. And that is the well out of which we can welcome radically without barriers to people, no matter where they come from. If we've got somebody who's in our shower ministry that comes into the church, they're just as much a part of our family as anybody else We became open and affirming. That whole thing led us to the LGBTQ community, to open wide our doors there, as well as people who are, maybe more conservative politically, and everybody has a place at the table.
Yeah.
And, so we live by those core values. We live by that mission, and that has informed how we have developed the ministries that we've been involved in. Now, we've had a major childcare ministry for over 40 years, one of the largest in Kentucky, nonprofit. We have recovery groups that meet. Those were all going on before we came, but the food ministries, the homeless ministries, we have 40 community partners that provide services, so that when somebody comes to get a shower or get food from us, that we have ways of connecting them with resources that will help them to move out of homelessness into, what we would consider more stable living. And so they come to our place, these community partners, and we connect them with each other. So there's lots and lots of partnerships. We do not, when we serve 1,500 people through our food ministry distribution twice a month, we open that opportunity for service to anybody who wants to help us. And that's the only way we could do what we do, is through recognizing our partnerships with each other.
Yeah. So I'm thinking about this. You've been at your church, you said 10 years thereabouts, right? I mean, that's a long time. I'm sure you've seen your fair share of conflict and division in the church, as much as you've tried to lead well. I'm curious, again, as we think about troubling times, even if you want to reflect on within your own community, there are troubling times within your own community. How have those values and being clear on mission helped? Because I feel like in many ways this is kind of what is a big, humongous divide. Divide's not the right word, but barrier, I don't know what the right word is, in our nation, is there's no kind of clear moral guidelines about what should direct our actions in future. How have you seen those clear mission and clear values help lead your community through conflict and division?
Yeah. And I want to say, I did a leadership thing on conflict, because George Bullard wrote a book called Every Congregation Needs a Little Conflict, because conflict actually provides the opportunity for growth to happen. And I love to use the metaphor of a butterfly. It starts as a caterpillar, is in a cocoon, and has to fight to get out of that cocoon. And that fight is what provides the wings to fly. And if you cut that, if you don't go through it, it will never develop its wings. And so, we certainly have had conflict. And I would say one of the challenges, and we'll talk about this maybe a little bit later too, I think for the North American church, and probably churches all over the world, is when we went through COVID, it changed us, and it decreased our size. And it was, we still have lots of people who join us on Sunday mornings, and we don't see them at church.
Right.
And there are things that have happened. There are troubling things that have happened as a result of that. A couple of things on both sides. So for the people who are staying at home, there's this disconnect in some ways. Yeah. And loneliness. Yep. That doesn't happen when you're gathering in small groups, at least, and connecting with each other in person. It also has meant, decreasing in sizes of giving and those kinds of things, which have created, the challenges that we're facing. What we try to do is to be nimble with that, and to, say, okay, God, what is it that we can do? Are there things that we need to let go of so that we can take on something different? And that's I would say that's a huge challenge for us. But not to be afraid of conflict. And we certainly have, we've gotten in what was his name? John, Good Trouble. I'm having a moment.
Oh, yeah. I can't think of the author either,
Yeah.
but yeah.
From Georgia.
Yeah.
Yeah, he passed away. But yeah, we've gotten into some good trouble.
John Lewis.
John Lewis. Thank
Right.
you.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've gotten into good trouble before with, last year we had very, very dangerous cold weather. We've had it again this year. And we wanted to offer space for people to come in out of the cold. And we were told we were not zoned to do that, and so we've been struggling, with our city and county to find ways to work together so that no one dies.
Yeah.
That there are ways in which we can work together on that. And that is continuing to be a struggle for us. And part of, I think it's just part of the cost of discipleship too. Right.
Yeah.
So.
And I appreciate you say that, this idea of a good conflict, because I think there can be this sense of we want to avoid conflict at all costs. And I think getting to the broader picture, I feel like that's been somewhat problematic about our culture at large, right? It's almost like this, like we can't ever talk about anything controversial. Like we can't talk religion, can't talk politics. And then it comes to the point where, like, when it does come out, it's just like all anger and vitriol, because it's kind of this blowing the top type conversations. Is that, yeah?
I totally agree. And I think we are, especially in the church, where we want to be unified. And so sometimes we avoid those hard conversations. And I'm a 2 on the Enneagram. So I'm a people pleaser and I'm wanting everybody to love me. So that's one of the challenges that I have had of personal growth over my life, is to find ways of being in conversation and even in conflict, in healthy ways, so that we can find commonalities, we can respect each other, and we can grow. All of us can grow through doing that.
Yeah, I appreciate you sharing that. I want to kind of shift gears here toward the seeking wisdom and understanding, but I'm curious, you mentioned those 3 core values of welcoming, serving, and forming. But what struck me as most interesting is you said your church can't welcome and serve before they're formed. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, and this is where our church has that service DNA. They absolutely love service. In fact, we end our worship services every single week with the mantra, the worship is over, now the service begins. And so we say that, the worship leader or I will say, the worship is over, and the people shout it out, now the service begins.
That's great.
The weak link for many people is that they're so much into service, or so much into social justice, or so much in that not having the faith balance, the forming faith every day and that kind of thing, it makes us lopsided. And so what I want to say to folks, and we just did a series on shalom, finding shalom, that it begins with finding peace with God.
Yeah.
Then we find peace with ourselves. And only after we find peace with God and peace with ourselves can we find peace with each other. And so out of that, think about that in terms of conflict. Because many times when we have differences of opinion, we want to preserve, or put our opinion out there as the right one. And, when we have done that work ahead of time, when I meet with somebody that I don't know, it makes me at least be mindful that this is another human being, loved by God beyond measure, created in the image of God. And even though I might disagree with every single thing that person says, they still have value. They still have dignity. And I need to treat them that way. So yeah, that's that's what I mean when I talk about forming faith every day, is that spirituality has to be the center of where we come from.
Yeah, I'm appreciating that for two reasons. One is I kind of reflect on the state of young men in our nation and how so many are kind of moving hard right. And, as I reflect, as the next generation of men, I want better for them. And I'm thinking like so many of them, I feel like we're the ones who are kind of marching in the Black Lives Matter 4, 5, 6, whatever that was years ago.
Right.
And it seems like without kind of a foundation, they have been kind of swayed otherwise, opposite. And then two, I think the other thing that I imagine you can agree with is, I think without kind of, like you said, that foundation of this is an image of God bearer, there can be this kind of like win at all cost mentality. I mean, I just saw this video this morning of someone who's famous going viral on YouTube for like being mean to conservatives, and I'm just like, what are we doing here? Like, how is that going to win anybody over?
It will not. It will not.
Yeah.
And we have to realize, I mean, and I don't even think, even when Jesus was being critical of others, especially the religious leaders who thought they had it all together, I don't think he acted ever out of a disrespect for humanity or their humanness.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I think my interpretation of what he did was always about getting people to understand that living in relationship with God, relationship with each other has to be based on love.
Do you think I'm writing down the words living in relationship, trying to spell that here.
Yep.
Do you think that's an essential element of it, is living in relationship with people? Because again, I'm going back to your church community. Like you said, you have people in relationship with one another who may vote differently, but because they are in relationship with one another, they have a common mission to serve and love others.
Yes. It's all about my understanding of the gospel of the Christian life, discipleship. That is it. That is the basis of it. And love is expressed through respect. And I can challenge someone and respect them at the same time as a person. And we can have, I can have a conversation. I'm thinking about a couple of people in my congregation who we are very much on different sides of the political spectrum, and we love each other, and I can have a conversation with them and ask them questions.
Yeah.
And let them ask me questions.
Yeah.
Why do you, tell me more about where you are coming from so I can understand. Stephen Covey in the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People says, seek first to understand, then be understood. And I think that is really, really key. And that kind of, in terms of the work that Rita and I are doing, kind of fits in with that. Because, part of what we do with moral injury work is focus on listening. Rather than fixing the other person, to listen well. And you were able to experience a little bit of that at the Renew and Remind conference through our fishbowl experience. But when I have healing circles in my congregation, which we've had several of them over the years, one of the things that I keep being amazed by is in congregations, most of the time, you think about people who come to worship. How are you doing? Oh, I'm doing great. How are you doing? And it's just this little thing. And very rarely will people take the time to be transparent, maybe about how they're really doing. So in these healing circles that we have done as a pilot project of how to heal from moral injury, We are very, very cognizant that we tend not to listen well.
Yeah.
Because we're thinking about the next thing we want to say to that person. And so in the healing circle, you do not get to speak. You do not get to refer to what somebody else has said. You only speak your thing, your truth. And as you're listening in the rest of the circle, the nonverbal affirmation of putting your hand over your heart, nodding your head, doing those things, you are focusing on that person and they are feeling heard. But the beautiful thing for me, as one who tends not to listen very well, I'm thinking about that next thing I want to say to you. But it gives me that space to listen and to recognize the image of God in that other person that's sharing a really hard thing.
Yeah.
And being able to empathize with where they are.
I want to stay on, this is sort of off topic, but I think it fits in. I want to stay on this healing circle, because Susan is describing something that they led at Remind and Renew, kind of put into practice a healing circle. So maybe, I guess, real quick, just describe it. But what I want to come back to is, so just real quick, describe like the ins and outs of it. And then I want a follow-up question.
Right. So let me just say that I've developed this project out of a sabbatical project that I had with the Louisville Institute, entitled, Moral Injury, a Catalyst for Reform. And the idea was, for those of us who have a working definition of moral injury, it is very, very, Rita will define it much better than I do. But the way that I describe moral injury is participating or witnessing something that happens that takes us beyond our moral compass, the thing that creates harm. And so we know this, veterans come back from war, they've been commanded to do something like kill a non-combatant, or they've had, they come back with survivor guilt or whatever it is, but it is a moral injury that often they don't talk about with anyone else. It leads to a higher rate of suicide. And then during COVID, we saw this breaking out in the general population, because doctors were having to make decisions about who was going to go on life support and who wasn't.
Yep.
And families were not able to be with their loved ones when they were dying.
Yep.
And pastors were not able to go into hospitals and hold the hand of somebody who was dying. I mean, all of us had this distress and injury that it was going on. So part of my project was to look at the healing ministry of Jesus as a metaphor for leading us out of this moral injury. And so, where churches in the United States have focused so much on church growth and those kinds of things, what I wanted to say is maybe this is a time in which the church is being called back to healing ministry. Healing ministry. And so we developed these, what we called healing circles. We call them also talking circles, or we call them soul repair circles. They're all the same. And I really benefited from, Rita and what she was doing with the Volunteers of America online program, as well as another, circle ministry out of, with a UCC pastor, retired pastor up in Northern Ohio, had been working with veterans for 15 years at the time. And, so learning from them, but to create something that would be, an opportunity for people to come in and talk about that stuff. So creating a circle, very ritualized. Everything is, prayed over before a group walks into a room, and it's all set up in a certain way. And we have symbols in the room. And, we might have a cross. We might have a shell, that we put anointing oil in, and people can anoint themselves. So it's just, creating that space. And, when people come in, they have to be quiet. and they have to listen. And we have a stone that we allow people to hold and tell their story. There will usually be a prompt at the beginning of the session. So I might ask someone or everyone to take 7 minutes, 10 minutes to write a letter to someone who they have unfinished emotional business with. That's one of the prompts that we will be using. And it's powerful.
Yeah.
Because a lot of times, and trying to use different ways with the senses and different ways to get people in touch with what's going on in their soul.
Yeah.
But one of the things that I love about healing circles is it gives permission, and you would be amazed at what people will share in an environment that is confidential, that is that nothing that is shared is off limits. They can share whatever they want to share, and they're fully accepted.
Yeah.
It's powerful. And people in our congregation, I have one guy who came in who had been, so much trauma in his childhood, and he's probably in his early 40s and in therapy and has had lots and lots of trauma that he's experienced. And he told me after being in he got more out of being in a healing circle than in all of the years that he'd been in therapy, which is amazing to me.
Yeah.
And truly a work of the Spirit.
Yeah.
So anyway, what we're doing at this point is trying to help other congregations to know that, that these are tools we can provide, and hopefully, lay people in the congregation lead these. I don't lead them. So it's not one more thing on the pastor's plate to do, but to equip the lay people to do that ministry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's such an important tool. Things like this like practically speaking, like it doesn't have to just be the pastor and empowering lay folks, but creating spaces for understanding and wisdom communally. I was remembering when you led this in Tulsa, I think that if I'm remembering correctly, the prompt was on an Habakkuk text. Do you remember the text?
Yeah, it was a lament from Habakkuk chapter 3, I think. I can't remember right now, but it even though the leaves wither and it's kind of like, I will trust in you, oh God. I mean, no matter what happens in my life and how bad things may seem, yet I will trust in you, and I will be yours, kind of thing. And so it was an opportunity for people to think about the things that they're lamenting at the moment. And, so many times in my ministry, people have said, I can't be angry with God.
Right.
Angry with God. And, I had this recently, my spiritual director asked me to do something on feelings, and I'm this person most of the time.
Uh-huh.
But I'm also this person some of the time. And
for listeners, there's a bright sun and then a red angry sun.
Angry sun. Yes.
Yeah.
And the thing about it is Scripture says it's okay to complain. It is okay to tell God, because God's got the capacity to take all of that. And it's not a statement of a lack of faith in God. It's a great statement of faith in God when we bring our injuries and in our troubles to God. I keep this up here in my office to kind of, do a little inventory of myself from time to time, just to say, hey, I'm not always going to be up, and that is okay.
Yeah. And I think lament is such an important and neglected tool. And I'm just thinking, like, I was just an observer for that healing circle and was listening to the Habakkuk text, and folks kind of interpreting that, accordingly. And then a few weeks later, like, I was leading a small group at my church, and we were talking about joy and the Philippians text, and the kind of the paradox of finding joy in the midst of challenge. And I remembered that Habakkuk text, and I kind of like right then and there was like kind of demonstrating it for the group. Like, even though my commute was terrible, even though, it's, all this, and it was powerful for me even just to say that. And I think similarly for folks to hear that. And it's just such a wonderful example. Well, I'm grateful for this conversation. We do need to take a break and come back with some closing questions. So let's take a quick break and we'll come back with some closing questions. All right, we're back with Reverend Dr. Susan Diamond. Thank you so much for this conversation. And I feel like we need to have, I feel like you need to send me an image of the happy and mad son for the show notes.
Okay, we'll do that.
For those who just listen and may want to see it. Okay, these closing questions, we always tell folks you can take these as seriously or not as you'd like to. If you're Pope for a day, what do you want to do?
Okay, so duh. Talk to any female minister, I think they would say ordination of priests, women priests, for sure. Yeah, absolutely. I guess if I got to be the Pope, that would already be a done thing. But just saying. Yeah.
Maybe you're the first. A theologian or historical Christian figure you'd want to meet or bring back to life.
Yeah. Dietrich Bonhoeffer. I have always been fascinated with him, both for his incredible faith and insight into what does it mean to be the community of faith, the confessing community, and his courage. That he had to stand up against Hitler. He's, and I've also been fascinated with, his, cause I consider myself a pacifist, and that what was it? I really want to understand what led him into being a part of the resistance to the point that he was involved in conversations about assassination. I would really love to have a conversation with him. I love his work, his books. The Cost of Discipleship is one of them, and the one on community I think is excellent as well. Yeah, I'd like to talk to Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
Well, here's a loaded question, if ever there was. One, what do you think history will remember from our current time and place?
Yep. Lots of fear, lots of anxiety over the future. And I think I'm getting closer to retirement. And of course, wondering what the future will look like for someone like me. So personally, nationally, globally, we're in the midst of great climate change and all of those things. So I think, I think fear and anxiety over the future is really palpable right now, right? Yeah.
Well, let's end on something.
And like I said about Rita, talking with Rita about this, I think that there's going to be a lot of work for us to do. And I hope that we will be able to do it, with regard to moral injury, because I think that's going to be part of it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Let's end on something more positive. What do you hope for the future of Christianity?
Okay. I think I hope at least 3 things.
Yeah.
The first would be to remember who we are as human beings. And we talked a little bit about that, with regard to being created in the image of God, beloved by God, and what love actually calls us to as followers of Jesus. So, when you say, people, even, we see in the church this division that has happened and a making of enemies based on things that should not, that should not be. And so how can, as followers of Christ, how can we move into the future with the values of Christ, the core values of Christ, which is all about love. And, and I don't mean the kind of love that's the feel good love. I'm talking about the love that's the hard kind of love.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
You've been married 46 years. You know something about hard love, right?
I do. And okay, I'm going to tell y'all this. This is great. My, probably 20 years ago, I remember one of my aunts saying to me that as, she and her husband had been married longer, that a different kind of love emerged, and it was good. And I have to say now, I'm more in love with my husband now than I have ever been. And it's a different kind of love, and it's a deeper love. And, so that gives me hope, not just for my relationship with him, but as we focus on love, what the hard stuff, how does that bring out about God's good in the world? So that's one thing. The other is, let's see. 3 things. Okay. So we talked about renewing the ministry of healing in the church. This is one of the things my hope for the future of Christianity is, how do we move from, church growth, which I understand we want more people to know Christ. And if we're doing the things that we have the values that Christ has, so sorry.
It's okay.
I was trying to stop that. Okay, I'm going to turn. It's silenced on my phone. Apparently it's synced with my computer. But the second thing is renewing a ministry of healing. And then, as I am preparing over the next few years to retire, one of my real heart's desires and passions is, that God will call new spiritual leaders, in the church. And I know that seminary enrollment's down, and I just pray that God will bring the right people to ministry, because it is a wonderful, hard, fantastic life. I have really loved what I have done. And there have been lots of times of tears, and there's been lots of times of struggles, but overall, I'm so thankful for the call to ministry that God's given me. So, I'm praying for new spiritual leaders to come in that have a heart for God and, are really about the core values of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, you have a podcast, right? Where can folks connect with you and the podcast, all that?
Yeah. So on the VOA, Volunteers of America website at the Shea Moral Injury Center. And now you can get this podcast anywhere where you get podcasts, but if you want to go to their website, you can also see, the show notes and that kind of stuff. But we have a podcast called Soul Repair After Moral Injury. And, it's co-hosted by Rita and me, and we talk with all kinds of people in this very limited 6-episode limited series. We've talked about doing some more. We haven't yet, but, who knows what the future will lead us to. We also, are envisioning a book that we will be writing for the church, specifically for the church on moral injury. And so we hope that that will be a blessing for the church in the future. And some other stuff about me you can find out on our church's website at florencechristian.org. Florence in Kentucky. There's a lot of Florence Christian churches around, so it's got to be the one in Kentucky. Also, the church has a Facebook page, and we also have a YouTube channel. So, you can find sermons and meditations and daily devotions, those kinds of things on those channels. So, feel free to check it out.
Great. Well, thanks so much for the conversation. Really appreciate your perspectives here. Something we could do, folks should do more of, we try to do here at this podcast, leave folks with a word of peace. So may God's peace be with you.
And with you. God bless you.
Thanks for joining us on the Future Christian Podcast. The Future Christian Podcast is produced by Resonate Media. We love to hear from our listeners with questions, comments, and ideas for future episodes. Visit our website at future-christian.com and find the Connect with Us form at the bottom of the page to get in touch with Martha or Loren. But before you go, do us a favor. Subscribe to the pod to leave a review. It really helps us get this out to more people. Thanks, and go in peace.